fishing. People, when you're in the mood, let's go fishing. Well, it's just me and you. Head on down to the fishing hole. Grab your hat, get your pole. Let's go fishing when you're in the mood.
Canadian Sport Fishing is brought to you by Rapala, premium fishing gear crafted from experience. Yamaha, conquer outdoors. Bait Cloud, bring the fish to you. Dickies, quality workwear since 1922.
Even though the Great Lakes are deep and large, many sections of them have ideal environments for growing trophy walleye. For example, the eastern end of Lake Ontario actually narrows off and eventually becomes the St. Lawrence River. And where that happens, there's also a very large bay that's created by Prince Edward County. It's called the Bay of Quinte. This is literally a breeding ground for walleye. The bay actually includes the mouth of the Trent River, which is at Trenton, Ontario, and then it extends eastward towards Belleville all the way to Deserano and then heads south to Picton, Ontario, and then left to Lake Ontario. These different sections of the Bay of Quinte are very unique. The upper Bay of Quinte has shallower water. The average depth is about 12 feet. But when you head down to the lower sections, like Adolphus Reach, the water can average 80, 90 feet in depth. And it's that combination of shallow, weedy water and deeper water with some weeds and structure that is excellent for growing a really good walleye fishery. I love to fish late summer walleye. One of my favorite places is actually on Lake Ontario. I'm fishing a very big bay. It's the lower part of the Bay of Quinte. This stretch is called Adolphus Reach. And we've got about 75-degree air temperature. It'll probably get hotter today. The water temperature is pretty warm. We're looking at about 75 degrees Fahrenheit. And I'm targeting walleye on the weed lines. And as you can see from looking in the boat, I've got a whole bunch of rods. These are packed, ready for use later. But I've noticed something as soon as I came down to the boat launch, that the water is green, which I think is great. That's called an algae bloom. So they're little tiny particles in the water, which actually help when you're walleye fishing because they diffuse the strong sunlight. And today, it looks like we're gonna have a really nice, bright day. So we're gonna have great conditions. And those walleye are gonna be able to come in even in shallower water to feed, as shallow as 4 or 5 feet. So what I've done to start off with, I'm going to be using a bait casting outfit because I like the idea of controlling my cast when I'm casting to the edge of the weed line, that I can stop it just before the heavy weeds start. So I'm going with the bait caster. The other thing that I decided is to use a very bright colored crankbait. This is one of the new, it's a Rapala Scatter Wrap Tail Dancer. And you can see this one is really bright. Not only is it fluorescent colors, it also has a UV finish. So it's very bright, and it won't change that bright color no matter whether that algae is in the water or how deep down it goes or how dark it might get if it gets overcast. So that's going to be my first strategy. So I actually, before I rigged this on, I tried a bunch of lures just off the dock where I was tied up with the boat, and I was watching to see how they looked in the water. One of my favorite colors to use down here is perch, because these walleye that follow these weed lines are looking for perch to feed on. They're actually part of the same family. Both the fish are perch, so think of it as a big perch, which is the walleye eating a smaller perch. You know what amazes me about fishing on the Bay of Quinte, and especially down here close to Lake Ontario, is that the fish will hit in the middle of the day. Beautiful walleye. Middle of the day cranking fish. You can see they've got a lot of energy. And he's hit that front hook. I don't know if he's gonna get off. I'm gonna grab the net. We've got a little bit of a wind blowing. Look at that. Just fits nicely in the net. But you can see, because they're feeding primarily on perch, I've got that perch colored crankbait on. And he hit it on the front hook primarily. He got tagged by the back one, but that's the one that did the deal right there. So that would be considered an eater down here on the Bay of Quinte. I'm guessing he's about 21, 22 inches. You can see that they're in prime shape. Look, nice round belly. See how wide that back is? We call those shoulders. You'd get really nice fillets. And the way I'm holding him, I'm not into the actual gills themselves. I'm just holding the gill plate. So this guy's gonna take off real quick. I don't think it's gonna take long. They've got so much energy. Whenever I go down and fish the eastern end of Lake Ontario, I usually choose Belleville as my home base for a couple of reasons. From Belleville, I can either go west towards Trenton, or I can go east and even head down almost to Lake Ontario. Belleville has all the amenities and very good places to launch your boat if you're fishing around Belleville. So it's easy access off the 401, an ideal spot to reach all of the different sections of the bay. You know, we've been fishing out almost 1,000 feet from shore. Oh, hold on, 1,000 yards from shore at these open water weed beds closer to Lake Ontario. Now we're fishing weed lines that are only about 20 feet from shore, and it's still like 20, 30 feet deep. Good fish for the middle of the day. You know, I like the idea of not having to get that worm dirt underneath my fingernail. Isn't that a pretty walleye? Very healthy. And you can see the way he hit that crankbait. So very simple, it's about 1:30, and we're still getting these gorgeous fish.
Closed captioning of this program is brought to you by Defend Products, eco-friendly protection from biting insects.
The bay offers excellent fishing for a variety of fish, including large and smallmouth bass, pike, panfish, all of the coarse fish, but the big draw is the walleye. Fishermen from all over North America will actually come up to the eastern end of Lake Ontario, both in the summertime, fall, and also in the wintertime, to catch walleyes that often exceed 10 pounds in weight. As a matter of fact, 14 and 15 pounders are caught every year, so it's a very prolific fishery. This is good, you know. Usually if you find one walleye on a weed line, there's some more that move in and out. So you have to be patient. A lot of times I'll fish weed lines that are out in the open, and you won't get anything the first time you fish, you know, 3, 4 weed lines, and then you come back later in the day and you end up catching fish. Oh, did you like that release? Did you see the weight? He was too small, you know? I like those fish that are around 2 feet long. The walleye is part of the perch family, so it behaves very similar to the panfish, to the perch. They both like deep or shallow water. They like weeds. They also like structure breaks. But one thing that's very important for us when we're trying to catch walleye love to eat perch. So they'll hang around in the same areas. Actually, when I'm casting a crankbait and I see perch following my crankbait, I get excited because I know that that means that there's probably walleye in that area that are going to be feeding on those perch. This is fighting funny. It's really heavy. I hope it's a walleye. Could be a sheep's head, could be a channel catfish. Man, my wrist is actually getting sore. Let's see if I can get him in the net. He's going under the boat because the way the wind is blowing. Come on up here. Oh, I think he saw the net. I don't think he's hooked that well. Oh, come on, there. Oh, you know what? It's actually hard for me to hold him with my left hand. Look at that, nice walleye. That fish came from about 18 feet of water. I switched to that tail dancer number 11 to get down at least 15 feet. And you gotta admit, I mean, look at how thick this guy is. He's round, beautiful fish. I'd say he's just over 2 feet. You know, when guys ask you, did you get any fish? Yeah, I got some 2-footers, some walleye. I love surprises, don't you, when you're fishing? Especially when you crank, you know, like deeper weeds. He wanted a big meal, because that crankbait looks like about a 5-inch perch. Look at it, he's a slab. Get him in the net. You know, a lot of guys that are fishing from a bass boat would probably just lean over and grab the fish. But this G3 is a little bit higher out of the water, and I like that because when it's rougher, it's a little bit more comfortable to fish out of than a bass boat. There. Now look, isn't that a pretty big bait for a largemouth to hit? But these guys that live in the deeper water, you know, don't really look for frogs or stuff, you know, along the shoreline. They're actually prowling to get larger fish. It's a beautiful largemouth, fought well. I'm gonna release him gently because I got a lot of respect for him. There he goes. You know, when it comes to casting, especially for largemouth bass, bait casters are synonymous with bass fishing. A lot of people are intimidated by bait casters because they've never used one before and they think you can literally take it out of the box, put line on it, and start casting with it. It's not that simple. There's a lot of things you need to know to set up your bait caster properly. This particular one is a Chaos. It's made by Rapala, and I've got it matched on a Concept TI bait casting outfit. And this thing weighs under a pound. It's an amazing outfit, very sensitive, very strong. So when you get a bait caster for the first time, you have to be aware that you have to set up your bait caster depending on the weight of lure that you're using. Modern bait casters have an actual knob here for tension of the spool. That's this knob right here. And they also have a knob with magnets, a magnet setting. So what you want to do is have it set up so that when you let go of the line, it falls down very slowly. Look, I'm shaking my rod. I'm actually going to pull it with my finger. The reason it's coming out slowly like that is because I'm in windy conditions. You don't want it to just free drop or be on free spool. So to set that properly, what you have to do is, number one, shut your magnets off. Then set your tension dial so that it's just right, okay? So you don't want it to drop too fast. Look, I just let a little bit off on the tension dial and you can see how it's dropping. Because it's windy, I tighten the tension dial a little bit and it's dropping a little bit less. And now, look, see, it's barely dropping. So, until you get used to your bait caster, it's very important that you set it up properly. That way, you won't have these backlashes. We call them professional overruns. Now, the reason they're so popular is because with the bait caster, when you cast, you actually stop the line with your thumb. So you can be extremely accurate when you're casting to weed lines for crankbait fishing. And also, as soon as you turn the handle, it's engaged. So if you get a hit right away, you can set the hook. The other thing that I like about bait casters is that you can have a lot of leverage on the fish. With this particular model, you can see it's got this split grip. So when I go to set the hook, I can actually brace the bottom of it to my arm. So it's literally my whole arm lifting up when I get a fish. It's not just my wrist that can be really weak. So if you're going to be doing a lot of casting with crankbaits for bass, especially around weed lines, a bait caster set up properly really will do the trick for you. During the summer months, walleye can actually suspend in pretty deep water in the Great Lakes. It doesn't matter if it's Lake Michigan or Lake Erie or Lake Ontario. It's actually common for fishermen in Lake Erie to be trolling in 60 to 80 feet of water and even deeper for suspended walleye anywhere from the top to the bottom. The biggest factor in finding those fish is to cover a lot of water. The one challenge that we have as walleye anglers, especially in the Great Lakes, is that walleye are always on the move. Yay, first walleye. Look at how long this fish is. I don't know if he's gonna head shake off. He's just hooked by the back hook. See, one thing, when you get the walleyes out here on Lake Erie, especially when they come out of deep water, they don't fight that hard. A lot of times, I'll tell you, that's hard to lift with one arm. A lot of times, you'll think you've got a small fish on. There we go. It's a nice walleye. That would be an eater. I'm guessing he's about 3 or 4 pounds. Most people would keep him for eating, and I'm going to keep a few, but this guy I'm going to release because he's the first one. I'm going to try holding him into the current. You can see his head is facing the right way. And then in a second, I'm just going to reverse the net. So these are kind of hard to release here, but he's going to take off. There he goes. When walleye are suspended in open water, and this usually happens in the middle of the summer, they're really roaming and looking for a very large food supply. For example, at the eastern end of Lake Ontario, when they start coming in, you can get them in 100 feet of water, 80 feet of water, and they might be suspended 15 to 30 feet below the surface. And anglers there will use very large body baits or crankbaits to catch them, and they'll troll. You know, this is interesting. You'll see me going back and forth with the throttle. These walleyes, when you hit them, it's not like cooking a salmon, you know, that starts fighting or comes to the surface, or that rod is pumping and line is going out. They literally just swim with the rig. So they're kind of dopey. Just gonna slide the net over here. The big head shake. That's actually the most he's fought. Okay. That one might be a take-home fish. You know, this is interesting because this is the middle of the day. One thing that I like about the walleye here in Lake Erie is that you can see, if you look at the back, they've actually got a really wide back. They're cylindrical shape, which means that you're gonna get really good fillets from them. I don't really care to keep the larger ones, but when you get fish in like the 3-pound range, 3.5, there's lots of them out here. So they're actually great eating, and it doesn't really hurt the population.
Hey, I'm Doug Stevenson. I'm the Director of Tourism for Bay Quinte Tourism. We're just 2.5 hours from Toronto. A lot of people come here to get away from the hustle and bustle. We've got amazing outdoor space. You know, Sandbanks Provincial Park, an outlet beach, probably one of the best beaches in Canada. But then you've got smaller beaches like Frankfurt Tourist Park, right along the Trent Severn waterway. And that's what boaters love. You know, something like the Trent Severn, a series of locks that emanates northward from Quinte West.
When I plan my fishing trips to the eastern end of Lake Ontario for walleye, I determine my locations by the time of year. For example, in early summer and midsummer, I usually fish the Upper Bay, that section from Deseronto all the way to Trenton. That's a shallower area, and the walleye there tend to be anywhere from about 2 to 4 pounds, and they're very plentiful. But as the summer progresses and you get into late summer, and even early fall, the larger female walleye will come in from Lake Ontario, and I tend to concentrate to fish the lower end of the bay. This is interesting. I'm getting these fish hitting about 15 feet from the boat. You know, the water temperature is about 75 degrees, but these guys are still extremely active. He hit the back hook. Look at how healthy that walleye is. I mean, that is a quality fish. To hit a crankbait like that. Now, you know, I tell people it's very important that you leave at least the length of line out as the length of your rod. So see that there? If you're reeling too much line, it's really hard to hold on to the fish. There. Isn't that a nice walleye? Look, for middle of the summer, I'm gonna take a measurement on this fish, but that is a gorgeous looking walleye. So that guy's about 23 inches, but is he solid or what? You know, remember when the rubber nets, the live release nets were so heavy, you couldn't handle them with one hand. Now it's so nice that you can have these lighter nets. This guy should take off real quick, even though I handle him to get hooks. Look at the thickness of that fish. Gorgeous walleye. You should be able to go right back down. Come on, girl. There it goes. One of my favorite crankbaits to use for walleye, especially when I'm fishing the Great Lakes, is the Rapala tail dancer. I'll either use the one that's a size 9 centimeters long, or the number 11, which is 11 centimeters long. The tail dancer number 9 on a long cast and a regular crank will dive down to about 12 feet. The tail dancer 11 on a long cast and a normal crank will go down to 30 feet. So by using those two lures, I'm very confident because they have the right wobble, right vibration, right rattle, and also I can get to the right depth. You know, this is so nice when you're fishing rivers, especially ones that have color. You have to really work the structure areas. You can't be in a hurry. Come on. Well, you better get them head first. You know, that's a decent river walleye. And we might be on shore, but that's okay. So I'm just gonna get a measurement because we are gonna be releasing it. Let's see if I was right on the measurement. You know what? He's 24. You know, it doesn't matter if they're gray in color, silver, blue, yellow. These fish are amazing the way they whack crankbaits. Just an awesome fish. Okay, I'm gonna get him back. Okay, I'm gonna get him in quick. Oh, wow. I guess he didn't need to be held.
Canadian Sport Fishing is brought to you by Rapala, premium fishing gear crafted from experience. Yamaha, conquer outdoors. Bait Cloud, bring the fish to you. Dickies, quality workwear since 1922.
Look at this. This is a very good sign. See this long line? That's a walleye. We're going at 1.3 miles an hour. I don't want you to look at the top part because that tells you where I'm fishing. The water temperature, 76.5 degrees. So what I'm doing, see now we're going 2 miles an hour, I'm putting the engine from neutral to forward. So right now it's going to drop. The reason you see that line, a lot of people might think, what is that? It was just a line. It didn't look like a fish. Well, when a fish is stationary and you go over it, the sonar comes out in the shape of a cone.